Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, it's The Tom Woods Show, episode 2583, with our old friend Scott Horton back here. Scott has done everything there is to do in terms of anti-war work. You know his credentials, but in particular, the one we are focusing on now is this particular phone book size credential right here. His brand new book, Provoked, How Washington Started the New Cold War with Russia and the Catastrophe in Ukraine. If you guys follow social media, even a fraction of what I do, you'll see Scott is just all over the place on all kinds of big shows and small, humble shows like this one, talking about the importance of getting to the truth when all we have around us on topics of the greatest importance is propaganda that just gets repeated by virtue of it having been repeated. And people just come to believe it because other people believe it. And when you actually look at it, it turns out to be a paper tiger. So, Scott Horton, welcome back.
Thank you, Tom. Great to be here with you.
All right. Well, we had been gradually going through the let's say the background to what's going on in Ukraine now, going through your book. But what I'm proposing we do today is take one section of it and focus entirely on that. And that is Russiagate. And the reason I want to do this is that in some ways, Russiagate reminds me of the wars in the Balkans in the mid-90s, that people knew that it was happening, but then they would look at the details. There are a lot of names and meetings and things that they just, I'm never going to figure this thing out. Well, likewise, people in the back of their minds, they know there was something involving claims that Trump and Russia were colluding and the Russians were rooting for Trump and trying to manipulate the election in his favor because he would implement favorable policies toward them. But the actual details, I bet a lot of people don't know. And I just want to make sure that people have in their minds some of the main contours of this thing, because it's worse than you think. I mean, it's unbelievably outrageous, and it's incredible that you have friends, or at least acquaintances, on the let's say in the left liberal establishment of the Democratic Party, who are continuing to act like this is not a big deal, or that maybe they did find something or whatever. No, they were routed. They were wrong. They made all kinds of stuff up, and there's really no denying that. And I think that needs to be in some pithy way recorded. And so that's what we're going to do today. So you game for this, Scott?
Absolutely. Let's do it. I got such a chip on my shoulder about this thing. It's like that time they burned Waco, man. I'm mad still about it.
Geez, this is the most detailed treatment, by the way, in here. And in fact, I've marked it up, and I have a quote, page 389. I might get to in a little while. I want to read something that you wrote. But yeah, I can tell in there, because you say at one point, look, I've rooted for Trump against these other creeps, but I've never really described myself as a quote unquote Trump supporter. But I am a supporter of people telling the truth and an opponent of people making up lies. And so that's why I feel strongly about this. And you say, if it had been the other way around, I would have been just as outraged about that. So let's talk about exactly what the precipitating factor is that makes the Democratic establishment say, we're going to push this story and we're going to make life difficult on Trump.
Okay, so some of the very earliest parts of the origins of the story are still shrouded in mystery, but we do know from the journalism of the great Matt Taibbi from Racket.News that it's in the documents, and from their sources that they talked to, he and his co-journalists there, that John Brennan, the head of the CIA, got the whole ball rolling in the end of 2015. So to rewind a couple of steps, Bill Clinton had told Donald Trump, yeah, Donald, you ought to run for president. It'd be great fun. And so he was like, all right, maybe I should. And then we know from the Podesta emails that were posted on WikiLeaks.org, not leaked by the Russians, but we'll get to that in a second. We know from those emails that the Clinton campaign team had a program called the Pied Piper Strategy. And what it said was, we want our friends in the media, i.e. everyone, to boost Ben Carson, Ted Cruz, and Donald Trump, because they are the most fringy and right-wing candidates in the primary season. And we want to promote them. And obviously they especially met Trump because, obviously Carson didn't have a chance anyway. But then the winger is thought to be, under conventional wisdom, the easiest to beat in the general election. So that's why in the primary process, usually the wingers get weeded out. Think Tom Tancredo or Duncan Hunter, and then you end up with the centrist, Mitt Romney or John McCain. That's how it usually works. And they're the ones who have the best chance, at least, to get the swing voters in the general election. That's the common thinking. And in fact, Tom, if you go back to the last midterms that we had in fact, I'm not sure what they did about this time, but certainly 2 years ago, across the country, Democrats supported the kookiest pro-Trump people in the primaries against the establishment Republican Party candidate. And in every case, I think it was, where it worked and the winger got the nomination, they lost the general election, right? So that's a pretty good rule of thumb for a winner-take-all 51% district, which is how it works in America, right? So this is the Democrats' conventional wisdom, and they were trying to cheat for Hillary Clinton because she's so unlikable, they had to try to take every advantage that they could. And if you think back to that season, Trump, they boosted him. People would complain. They would show on CNN an empty podium with Trump on it for like an hour and a half waiting for him to arrive and give a speech. While meanwhile, Bernie Sanders would be giving a speech to 3,000 or 4,000 people and couldn't get any coverage to save his life. And this kind of, double standard, the way they were playing, they were just boosting him. Remember Joe and Mika on Morning Joe? They boosted him and boosted him and boosted him until it was clear he's getting the nomination. And then right around then, they all clicked their heels and did an about face. Now we hate him. Now the mission is to destroy him and to undermine him and delegitimize him and give him the Saddam Hussein treatment and try to undermine him in order to cheat and help Hillary. The problem was Hillary is just too horrible and just too evil and just too unlikable by too many people. She just could not get the momentum to win. And, frankly, I think all the cheating against him probably hurt her effort, because if she wasn't trying to cheat so bad, maybe she would have tried harder to not be such an evil person or try somehow to figure out how to be more likable in some way. But she relied on cheating and it didn't work. And so, but then I don't know of any direct coordination between the Clinton campaign and the CIA at this time. But Brennan was still the sitting director of the Central Intelligence Agency at the time. And he ordered, as Taibbi reports, he ordered that agents from the Five Eyes, this is essentially the Anglophone empire around the world, America, Canada, Britain, Australia, and New Zealand, share all their intelligence capabilities. You can throw in Israel with them because at least America shares everything they have with Israel. I doubt it's the other way around too, but anyway. And they ordered all these people to quote unquote bump into Donald Trump's associations and find ways to entrap them, basically find ways to get dirt on them to compromise Trump. And this almost certainly is the connection to one of the major stories, and really the one that helped become the excuse to get the official investigation launched by the FBI. And that was the story of George Papadopoulos. Now, he was essentially a nobody, no offense to him if he's watching, but he was like a consultant, a lower ranking guy. He's in his, I believe, maybe mid-20s at most. And he had tried to glom on to the Trump team and be some kind of advisor. He had done some studies about oil in the Mediterranean or gas in the Mediterranean and was some kind of an expert. I guess he'd been to college or whatever. He's some kind of an expert, but a lower ranking guy. And they set him up on this ridiculous thing where a British MI6 agent didn't apparently really say anything, but they later pretended that this British MI6 agent who bumped into him had told him that the Russians had Hillary's emails, and that then he had gone on and told that to an Australian diplomat named Alexander Downer. And then the idea was, in the New York Times telling of it, and in, the FBI's version of pretending to believe in this story long enough to launch an investigation based on it, was that, oh, see, he must have known. This guy, the British agent, is actually not a British agent. Misfoot was his name. No, he's a Russian agent. And he had this secret information from Russia that he told Papadopoulos about these emails. And that's the only way that Papadopoulos could have known. But that's all bunk. Obviously, well, first of all, Misfoot and Papadopoulos both dispute that they ever discussed leaked emails in any way whatsoever. But meanwhile, her emails were a giant issue in the news at the time. Her missing 30,000 emails from her private server that she kept at her house in her bathroom, that was a big scandal at the time. It had nothing to do with the emails that then came out leaked by WikiLeaks months later. But they just retconned the story and tried to make it sound like once the DNC and Podesta leak happened and the DNC emails were leaked, they said, aha, this must have been what Misfoot was telling Papadopoulos about. But it was completely bunk. He was not a Russian agent at all. He was a British agent. And he'd been sent there to incriminate Papadopoulos, but apparently they hadn't discussed emails at all. So they just kind of retconned the story and pretended that he had said that. And Papadopoulos swears, and I think credibly, that he had never said anything like that to the Australian diplomat Downer at all, who had also obviously clearly been sent to try to get him to say something in the first place. So that gives you a flavor of how the thing started, was they were clearly trying to set people up in order to incriminate Trump. And I don't know how far exactly all of the CIA shenanigans went here, but I think it's possible that they were, I don't know. It's whatever. It's purely speculation, but I guess it is possible that they were the pretended Russian email leak personalities, Guccifer too, and DC leaks. Because what happened, Tom, and I'm sorry I don't have all the dates right in front of me, but I think it was June the 14th of 16, maybe it was the 12th, that Assange, he should have kept his mouth shut. Assange told a media group that, yeah, we have some Hillary Clinton emails and we're going to be posting them soon. Something like that. I forget the exact language that he used. It was something pretty specific. And we're going to be posting, I think he said, some Hillary Clinton emails. So then what happened was these kind of like spoof leak web pages went up, Guccifer 2 and DC Leaks, and they pretended, essentially, they tried to retcon it and make it look like this is where Assange was getting his leak from. But they didn't go live on the internet until 2 days after he'd opened his big mouth and said that he was going to post the stuff. So it looks like somebody was trying to rush to retcon it in real time, if that's a thing, and make it look like he was getting his information from these two personalities, when in fact, when you check the timeline in the Mueller report and, you know, the final investigation of Russiagate, in that report and the rest, you'll see that he had, first of all, the stuff that they had provided him was a bunch of junk. It was the same stuff they'd given to other journalists who had said, this is a bunch of junk. It was like a fake dossier on Clinton that her own people had done on her, which was obviously, you know, cheap and worthless, and just some other junk. And we also already know, and this is an obvious debunking for anyone who knows anything about WikiLeaks or knew anything about WikiLeaks, was they didn't go off half-cocked and publish a bunch of leaked documents online after 2 days. They're always meticulous, and WikiLeaks to this day has never been caught publishing a fake or fraudulent or even altered document on their website ever, because of the diligence that they put into verifying. And I don't even know all their different methods that they use to verifying every document that they get before they post it. So it's if you look at the timeline of the government and the way that they claim this leak came to WikiLeaks, it doesn't make sense that he got the leak from these personalities. Also, their claim that the Russians must have hacked the election, that's their stupid hyperbole for later, but that they must have hacked the DNC servers, was essentially came from a contractor that was hired by the Clinton campaign when they already had, as I'll describe in just a few brief moments, this further plot to spread all of these different rumors about Trump and his connections to Russia. It was the same group that had worked on the Steele dossier and the Alphabet hoax and the Yada phones hoax and the DNS traffic hoax. These same people were the ones, the law firm working for the Clintons. I'm sorry, it's on the tip of my tongue. I'll think of it in a moment. Perkins Coie, C-O-I-E, Coie, whatever, however you say it. They were the ones who had hired CrowdStrike, the security firm that attributed the hack to the Russians. There's still no positive evidence that the Russians did the hack of the DNC or the Podesta leaks. And I interviewed a guy named Craig Murray, that you might remember from the W. Bush years, was the former ambassador to Uzbekistan for Great Britain. And he blew the whistle on Islam Karimov's horrible torture and oppression of his people with the support of the W. Bush and Tony Blair governments at the time. And I think he's kind of a leftist and certainly a anti-establishment, anti-war contrarian, and a really good guy. He's been writing great stuff. I think he's in Beirut now, writing about the horrors going on in Syria and stuff. But anyway, I interviewed him, and he's a good friend of Assange. And people can go back and find this interview. Don't read the Daily Mail story about it because they misparaphrase it wrongly. If you listen to my interview, what he says is that he knows for a fact who delivered or, who gave the leak to Julian Assange. And he says he met with this person. This is the DNC leak. He met with this person in a park in Washington. And I have confirmation from two other people who were at the dinner that he was at that he dipped out of there early that night, the same night that he supposedly went to go met this person. So at least like something did happen there. And he swears that there's no way in the world that this person has anything to do with Russia. And I admit I didn't follow up and ask about Seth Rich because at that time that was like the barest rumor. There was really nothing behind it. At least now there's some information to follow up on, some controversy over the way the FBI treated his laptop and denied that they had it and things like this for a while. There's at least some basis to ask about that. But I thought that was too speculative at the time. I kind of now wish at least that I had asked him about it. I think he probably would have said, no, that's not who it was. But I don't really know that for sure. But I have no real reason to suspect that that's who it was. But anyway, the point being, it wasn't Vladimir Putin. And he also said that he knew who did the Podesta leak, and that was someone from inside the U.S. government who was upset with Hillary Clinton. And that also had nothing to do with the Russians. But see, so at some point in here, Tom, the Democrats are, clearly aware of what the CIA is doing in setting up Papadopoulos and trying to get this thing going.
Hey everybody, time in the memorable formulation of Ludwig von Mises is an irreversible flux. Once it's gone, it's gone. And here we have the new year coming up. We're going to resolve to be more efficient with our time, right? A big part of why I get as much done as I do is my impatience with fluff in all areas of my life. My approach is get to the point, and I expect no less from my books. And that's what the Blinkist app does for thousands of nonfiction books in 27 different categories. No fluff, just the heart of the matter. You can absorb the Blinkist summary in just 15 minutes of reading or listening. What a time to be alive. And among the thousands and thousands of titles at Blinkist, you'll find libertarian classics, too, by Murray Rothbard, Milton Friedman, dare I say even Woods, your very own host here. Well, right now, Blinkist has a special offer just for our audience. Go to Blinkist.com/Woods to start your 7-day free trial and get 40% off a Blinkist premium membership. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist, Blinkist.com/Woods to get 40% off and a 7-day free trial. Blinkist.com/Woods. Now, for a limited time, you can even use Blinkist Connect to share your premium account. You'll get 2 premium subscriptions for the price of 1.
And so once the DNC leak happens, they come up with a plan. And the later prosecutor who investigated the origins of Russiagate, not just to investigate Russiagate, but investigate the origins of the fake story, he called this the Clinton Plan. And the information about it, the Clinton Plan Intelligence. And the Clinton Plan Intelligence was that the Clinton campaign had come up with a conspiracy to frame Donald Trump for a conspiracy with Russia to try to steal the election for him and by leaking the DNC leak and the Podesta emails to WikiLeaks, and that Russia did that on his behalf. And the thing of it is, a naysayer will say, yeah, but that Clinton plan intelligence comes from the Russians. Well, that it does. However, it comes from John Brennan too. We know because John Ratcliffe, who is going to be the new head of the CIA, he was then the DNI, Director of National Intelligence, and he put this out. He published this, that it was that John Brennan had briefed Barack Obama about the existence of CIA intelligence, about Russian intelligence, about what Clinton was doing. And the Russian intelligence was that the Clinton campaign had come up with a plan to blame Russia for the leak and to pin it on Donald Trump and say that it was all a plan to help Trump win. And so rather than dismissing that, we can take it seriously because we know that John Brennan then went and he briefed President Barack Obama and Vice President Joe Biden and others, I think his national security advisor and others of his top advisors in the White House about this plan. So that reads very much like John Brennan's CYA, that this is important enough that I have to make sure that the president knows about it. That, hey, remember that thing that we were doing? We're entrapping Trump for the Russia thing. Well, looks like the Democrats are doing it too. And how we know is that the Russians been spying on them and we've been spying on the Russians. And so now we know what they know. And John Durham, the special prosecutor, again, who investigated the origins of the fake Russiagate hoax, he's a career Justice Department special prosecutor. And Tom, he's the guy who let Bush get away with torturing people to death. He was the one who was appointed to investigate CIA torture. And then he narrowed it down to an investigation into whether they should have an investigation into 2 CIA murders. And then they dropped that. And he's that guy. So he's also the guy that prosecuted Whitey Bulger, or maybe he prosecuted the FBI agents who were compromising with Whitey Bulger or whatever. So he's known for having like a public corruption reputation in a way, but he let Bush get away with torturing people to death. So take that for what you will as far as his establishment credentials looking into this thing. He's clearly not some wingnut, John Durham. And he absolutely takes this as seriously as can be. And he describes throughout in his thing, and I talk about this in the book, that later on in the story, much later, after the hoax is over, and now he's investigating the hoax, when he goes and shows the Clinton plan intelligence to various FBI agents who had previously been assigned to investigate the case, they flip their lid and say, "What, are you kidding me? We knew this the whole time and nobody ever told me." And the one guy, he says, boy, he sure is a great actor, or he was really upset because he asked for a minute and went out with in the hallway, we could hear him talking with his lawyer out there, and came in clearly extremely upset and said, even if this wasn't 100% verified, he had the right to know this at the time. These are the angry FBI agents, or at least feigning anger. And I don't mean the bosses. I mean, these are the agents, the beat cops on the case who were assigned to the case, just absolutely upset that this was kept from them, that the government knew, the leaders of the FBI and the CIA clearly knew that Hillary Clinton and her group were now coming up with this extra set of conspiracy theories about Trump and Russia to layer essentially on top of what John Brennan had already gotten started with George Papadopoulos. Does that make sense? And now I'll stop talking for a second and let you say something.
Yeah, because I want to make sure that we even address folks who have heard the term Steele dossier and they're not exactly sure what's that. They know there was something salacious involved with it. So what I want to know is, first of all, talk about what's in the Steele dossier, how much corroboration was there of what was in there, and how does the Steele dossier and the George Papadopoulos stuff, where do they fit on the timeline with regard to each other?
Well, so one important point right there is that Papadopoulos isn't in the Steele dossier. And why? Because he wasn't getting secret information from the Russians about what was really going on with their secret agents by Papadopoulos or any of the information they'd fed him or any of this thing. He and his friends were making it all up. So unless something had already been in the newspaper, it wasn't in the Steele dossier, right? Essentially, all he was doing was saying, oh, this guy, it's a matter of public record, this guy traveled to Russia. And then he would write in this dossier, and then he had a secret meeting that no one could ever verify because it was made up, right? They would go, well, parts of the Steele dossier have been confirmed, Tom. Yeah, things that had already been published before they were written in the Steele dossier have been confirmed. Anything embellished beyond that was fake. Any and everything embellished beyond that was fake. So the thing is this, it's the Clinton campaign hires this law firm called Perkins Coie. I think that's how you pronounce it. I've never seen him say it. I only read it. COIE. And they hire as I said, CrowdStrike and also a team of researchers from Georgia Tech to try to do the attribution of the hack to Russia, which is completely fake. And by the way, on April Glaspie Day, July 25th, 2016, the day before the FBI even launched their official Crossfire Hurricane investigation, I interviewed a top-level security expert, computer security expert named Jeffrey Carr on my show, who debunked this whole story. And he said, let me tell you something. No one can look at a server and tell you for sure who broke into it, especially when you're talking about this level of shenanigans, because it's too easy for somebody to leave false fingerprints behind and make it look like somebody else did it. He said, there's only one group of people in the world who could tell you who broke into that computer and removed files from it if they did it remotely. And that's the National Security Agency. And they can tell you with 100% certainty. Okay? So only one group in the world could say for sure by tracing the packets back who exactly was breaking into that computer that day. And nobody else can. And they can tell you with 100% certainty because basically they can rewind the entire internet and they can just watch everything. They upload the entire take, the digital take of the planet every day, virtually all of it. If they know what they're looking for, they can dig through it and find what they're looking for. And so he said these companies claiming that they can prove that the Russians did it are blowing smoke, period. They know that they can't say that with any real certainty at all. And so that was before the Crossfire Hurricane investigation was ever even launched. That incredibly important and major facet of the show had already been debunked in public by this great guy, and including even on my show on April Glaspie Day, the 25th of July, 2016. So now Coie hires the Georgia Tech team and CrowdStrike for that. And they had the Georgia Tech team also doing this Yada phones, which is a Russian brand of cell phone, and a Russian traffic DNS hoax, and the Alpha Bank hoax, which is the story that Trump has a secret server at the Trump Hotel that takes its secret orders from a Russian bank called the Alpha Bank, which is run by a guy who's a friend of Putin. Aha, we figured it out, Tom. This is where Trump is getting his secret orders through the secret server and the thing. It was a total hoax, total bogus story. Another one that had been put forward by this same group of Georgia Tech dorks that had been hired by Perkins Coie. And Perkins Coie also then, to get to your question finally, they hired a group called Fusion GPS, which was run by a guy named Glenn Simpson, who's a former Wall Street Journal reporter who basically does opposition research and private investigative stuff and PR work and whatever. And they hired him to do opposition research into Trump. He had already on a contract been working for Paul Singer, the neoconservative, pro-Likudnik Republican Party financier from the guy that finances the Washington Free Beacon. So they had already been doing some research, although I think I believe them. I don't think I've ever seen proof otherwise that that's separate than what ended up in the Steele dossier, what they were doing under Singer already. I'm not 1,000% on that, but I think I'm like 99 though. But anyway, so Glenn Simpson hires a guy named Christopher Steele, and Christopher Steele is a former British MI6 officer who worked in Russia years ago and likes to pretend that he still has contacts there, but of course he doesn't. It's all BS. And Steele then writes this dossier. He writes it. It's Fiona Hill, interestingly, the Russia expert from the Bush, Obama, and Clinton National Security Council. Bush, Obama, and Trump National Security Councils. And then did she come back to work for Biden too? I forget. Anyway, she was at Brookings at the time, and she introduced a guy named Danchenko to a guy named Dolan, and then the two of them ended up working with Steele. And these were the two guys who made up all the lies in the Steele dossier. And the Steele dossier said that Putin has been grooming Donald Trump for 5 years. That is a long-term, well-developed plan to place this compromised, blackmailed Russian agent, Donald Trump, in the White House. In literally like that Agatha Christie movie, the Manchurian Candidate, where the Soviet communists, through the North Korean hypnosis techniques, put a sock puppet president in the White House. It's like that level of fantastic story there. And the key to it all was that they had secret camera footage of Trump cavorting with prostitutes in Moscow. And I won't go into any worse detail on your family show here, Tom, but the claim was that, now he's blackmailed and compromised and he's their slave and he has to do whatever they say because they have this embarrassing footage of him. And on top of that, they say that his campaign manager, Paul Manafort, and his other campaign advisor, Carter Page, are both agents of Russia working together to handle and control Donald Trump. Now, this is completely preposterous. And, it even got embellished to the point where Jonathan Chait at the New Republic wrote a piece speculating that Donald Trump had been a secret Russian agent since 1987.
And the justification for this was that he had visited Russia in 1987.
In 1987, yeah. Well, so, hey, don't you think 1987 comes before 2017, Tom? Sounds like it to me. And so that was, as far as they went with their, exaggerations and all their beliefs in this thing. And Ben Smith, who, I don't know if he's really an Israeli agent or not, but probably he is. He's certainly a scumbag reporter. Ben Smith is the one who posted the whole dossier at BuzzFeed, even after no other reporters would run with it. It had been shopped all around. And Michael Isikoff had run some of the implications out of it, but not really a whole story about the dossier itself. And no one was willing to publish the thing until at BuzzFeed, Ben Smith published it. And then all the liberals just went completely crazy. Like every kind of middle-aged, white, female, NPR listening Democrat voting liberal lady became a full 9/11 style truther, trying to piece together the real story of what really happened with the Russian spying. And so it just became this huge, media sensation. The fact that it was being taken seriously, apparently, by the FBI meant, of course, there's fire where there's all that smoke. This is not just some BS from some website. This is everybody in DC apparently knows that this is true. And they're, looking into it now. And the New York Times keeps reporting that there were multiple high-level contacts between the Trump team and high-level agents of Russian intelligence and all of these things. And so because the thing was being given wind by the very highest authorities in the land, it just became a huge phenomenon, an entire media sensation for years that just captivated the imaginations of the entire American left and carried them away. It was just really incredible to see. I know you're an expert in COVID. I mean, this was COVID before COVID.
Hey, everybody, now that I have adult children, what I look forward to most about Christmas is just having everyone home together. And seeing everyone's smiling faces is legitimately the best gift to me. And yet I worry about them a lot. And yes, one of those worries is, what if I'm not here? Will they be all right? And so this time of year is yet another reminder of how important it is to provide for them, even when you're gone, so they can handle the array of expenses they'll have to face as they regroup in your absence. And this is your spouse, your children, could even be a business partner. And Policy Genius is the place to go. Policy Genius's technology lets you compare quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. They're the country's leading online insurance marketplace, and you can rely on them for unbiased advice. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. Secure your families tomorrow so you have peace of mind today. Head to policygenius.com or click the link in the description or on the show notes page to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com.
And in fact,
well, you cite, if I may bring up two of my favorite people in the world, Paul Krugman and Max Boot. You have in your book here, you say that as soon as the Steele dossier became public knowledge, Paul Krugman referred to Trump as the Siberian candidate. By the way, Richard Condon is the author of Manchurian Candidate. And then Max Boot had a piece called Max Boot, who it turns out we now find out was himself married to a foreign agent.
And co-authoring articles with her in the Post.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, yes, I'm sure they still are married. But all the same, Max Boot wrote a piece called 18 Reasons Trump Could Be a Russian Asset. Now, I don't know why. I mean, I guess it's because I know this is all false, but I don't know. There's something so dumb and low IQ about the whole idea that Trump is awaiting his instructions from the Russians. The whole thing sounds so juvenile.
But that's how you know it's true, dude, because...
Yeah, but you know what? You know how else you know it's true? I have to turn to page 389, bro. This is how people knew it was true. And by people, I mean that large number of people out there who basically believe what they're told. And you say this, that anybody who fell victim to this hoax and bought into it, they, and now I'm quoting you, figure that anyone who did not believe it must be the conspiracy theorist, since to deny Trump's collusion with Russia would be equivalent to concluding that the FBI, CIA, Department of Justice, Washington Post, New York Times, the leadership of both major parties, and all the major TV news channels were some sort of deep state working together to push a lie that the president was a traitor being blackmailed and controlled by the Kremlin, and that would be crazy.
Yep. And that is how it worked. That is exactly how it was. That, like, I mean, come on, what are you really saying? That the CIA made up this whole thing, them and the Democrats? Yeah. And the thing of it was, and I'm just so inoculated. I mean, they've been lying to me my whole life, but Iraq War II was the one where people have heard me say before probably that, like, it's always 2002 to me. I relive that year all year round, year after year after year. I'll never get over it, the way they lied us into war with Iraq. It's just amazing. The level of S that they were shoveling, that people were willing to swallow, that couldn't possibly be right. And by the end of the thing, it was 100 claims, and every single one of them are demonstrably false before the war even begins. And you got people talking about, yeah, but 100's a really big number. And I'm going, yeah, but 100 times 0 is 0. This is a absolute hoax. Iraq, a threat to us? Shut up, man. It's so stupid. But you see, again, well, that's how you know it's true, because it couldn't be that embellished. So there must really be something there, even if we can't see it yet. And this is what, I was a cab driver at the time back then. And it was, well, George Bush must have secret information that we don't know about. There must be, I agree with you that the case they've made so far isn't really very strong, but there must be something there, or else why would they be doing this? Yeah. And so it's the same thing here. There must be a smoking gun that we haven't heard of, but boy, eventually they're going to nail this guy. Him and Mike Flynn and Sessions and Manafort and Page, and the walls are closing in. Boy, when they coerce, and this is, people should watch. There's a new documentary on the Tucker Carlson channel about Mike Flynn and the way that they railroaded this former general and his son. They almost drove his son to blowing his own brains out. And just through pure mendacity and lies, they coerced, and this was secret, they coerced Mike Flynn into pleading guilty on some lesser charge that had nothing to do with the accusations here, by threatening that they would put his son in the pen for like decades if he didn't plead guilty, which is illegal for them to do. And then they kept it secret, which is illegal for them to do, to make that deal. And then he finally got a good lawyer, or at least a different lawyer, who saved him from that, and he withdrew his plea and he fought it and he won. And I'm not a big fan of Mike Flynn, because I think that he did a disservice to America and to American forces in Iraq and in Afghanistan. But I certainly dislike him a lot less than most, or than many. He certainly has his bright spots, such as attempting to stand up to Barack Obama on his high treason supporting al-Qaeda in Syria 10 years ago, which is what got him run out of the DIA. And for all of his faults, it's just an absolute lie that Mike Flynn was ever pro-Russian in any sense, much less a traitor serving their interest at the expense of the United States of America. Give me a break. The guy's a 3-star general, the head of the DIA. Yeah, he went to that little RT dinner in Moscow. So he came right back and, of course, debriefed the military and presumably whatever civilian intelligence agencies, if they were interested, on everything that he had done. He was the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. He was on a secret mission undercover getting recruited by the Kremlin, but nobody else knew about it at the time? No. The whole story was he went to a dinner, okay? That was the whole story. Anyway, they claimed that Flynn, first of all, they smeared a perfectly innocent woman and claimed that she was a Russian spy and a honeypot, and that he fell for it and slept with her and was a compromised agent of Russia for that. She was a new wife and a new mother, and they smeared her as a prostitute, essentially, and a spy. This woman who, of course, it was 100% false. They had absolutely nothing on her whatsoever. She had no relationship with Flynn whatsoever. So if they had sat somewhere near each other at an event in England, it was her own professor at Cambridge, Christopher Andrew, who set her up and sold her out. This absolute scumbag. Anyway, and then they pretended, Tom, and you'll remember this because this is a huge controversy. They pretended that with no authority whatsoever, that Mike Flynn, who was at that time the designated incoming national security advisor in the first Trump term, that he had made a secret deal on the phone and got caught red-handed by the intercepts on the phone, making a deal with the Russian ambassador that he promised to lift sanctions against Russia. But that was not true. And they came up with a fake transcript. You got to watch this documentary about Mike Flynn on the Tucker thing. You'll love it, man. They come up with a fake transcript. They just lied. So we have a transcript here that proves that you said that. And that you lied to Vice President Pence about it. And he's like, what? But that was it. Trump demanded his resignation, sold him out, and threw him out. And instead of really getting his whole side of the story and standing up for what was right and sacrificed the guy. And then that became it was like the taste of blood in the water for the Sharks, right? Because, oh my God, Mike Flynn is out. He clearly lied. Oh, he lied to Mike Pence. Why would he lie to Mike Pence other than how guilty he is? And then, and now that he's pled guilty, he's flipped state's witness, and that means he's going to tell all. There's a great compilation file that someone had done of all of the TV news ladies saying the walls are closing in, the walls are closing in, the walls are closing in. Trump is going to be removed from office because we all know Mike Flynn is squealing like a pig right now. It was totally fake, totally not true. But based on that lie, Tom, they tried. They literally had meetings at the highest level of the Department of Justice of what can we do to get Donald Trump's cabinet to agree to overthrow him, to invoke the 25th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which is there for if Woodrow Wilson has a stroke, or if Bill Clinton sells missile technology to China for a couple of $100,000 or something like that, then you should impeach or remove him for that. But anyway, it would be for mental or medical incapacity. And they said, well, whatever, we obviously can't impeach him. Oh, I skipped the part, Tom, where Hillary Clinton tried to get Mike Morell of the CIA, the acting director of the CIA, to brief the Electoral College that Russia had stolen the election from her and that they should then vote to give it to her, or at least they should tie it up and throw it to the House of Representatives so that they could give it to Paul Ryan or Colin Powell or John Kasich. You think I'm making that up? In fact, that's the claim in the book that has the most citations. It's like one footnote with 10 or 12 or 15 citations because it sounds so crazy. I don't want you to think that I'm the one making that crazy stuff up. That literally is what the Democrats wanted to do, was try to rig the Electoral College against Trump, as though the electors don't all come from the 50 states, right? Like they're all from a garden party in Georgetown. They're not. They're from the 50 states. There's no way they were going to steal it from Trump, and they didn't. And of course, they couldn't get the cabinet to overthrow him under the 25th Amendment. But then what they do? They launched a phony investigation. As they put it themselves, they told CNN, if we can't remove Trump, at least we can rein him in. That's what the FBI told CNN. These unelected bureaucrats are going to rein in the elected president of the United States, who ran on getting along with Russia, by the way. The American people voted for the guy who said that was what he wanted to do. And they said, no,
in effect,
not let him do that.
And you argue in your book, in effect, that on that, unfortunately, you argue they more or less succeeded.
Yes, and we have I have a couple of quotes. One from his son when Trump bombed Syria. That, see, we're not Russian agents. If we were Russian agents, we wouldn't be bombing Syria, would we? And that was over one of the sarin hoaxes. I forget if that was 17 or 18. I think that might have been the 2018 sarin hoax where he said that. And then there's another quote where Trump is giving in an escalating arms shipments to Ukraine. And he's saying, well, you got to understand it would not be good politics for me to say no to this right now with all the pressure I'm under on this Russiagate stuff, whatever. So that was in there. Like the direct connection between these false accusations against them and then the policies that Trump, felt hemmed in and had to adopt. And at a later point, I quote from Keith Gesson, is quoting an official from Trump's own government from an article in the New York Times called "The Quiet Americans Behind America's Russia Policy." And they say in there that Trump is like the captain of a ship. He's holding the wheel, but it's not attached to anything. And so it's the rest of the national government. They're just doing their own thing. And to skip ahead a little bit, but I'll go back. If you go to the impeachment of Trump on Ukrainegate, which is son of Russiagate, you look at the main testimony of the initial real whistleblower is not Ciaramella. It's Vindman himself. Alexander Vindman is the original whistleblower who gave the story to Ciaramella, who then turned it into a whistleblower complaint and blew it into the whole thing that it became. But Alexander Vindman explains clearly in his testimony and in his article in The Atlantic that we have a Russia policy and a Ukraine policy, and Donald Trump is not allowed to change it. Who the hell does this guy think he is to change our Russia policy? Our Russia policy, says the lieutenant colonel from the National Security Council, where, Tom, it's the interagency. And we've all met. We had a deputies committee meeting, and at the interagency, we all decided what we're doing here. And that's it. What else do you need to know? The idea that Trump standing for and winning an election and earning his place and only his place sitting in that chair behind that desk, irrelevant. Trump has no right to do this to Ukraine, declares Alexander Vindman. He has no right to change American foreign policy. The interagency has decided. The permanent government, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, the bureaucrats. They're the ones who decide, not him. And it's explicit in his impeachment that that's what he's being impeached for, is for daring to try to, and it's the slightest shift. He held up an arms shipment for a couple of days. The Ukrainians didn't even notice. Nothing happened at all. He never extorted them at all. They all testified, nobody extorted me. I don't know what you're talking about. The scandal was that he was trying to shift, and they weren't going to let him do that. And it was his fault for having a Ukrainian national sitting on his National Security Council in the first place. I don't know how that guy even got into the U.S. Army. But anyway, so that's, what's going on here is they're refusing to let, and look, and he was, again, he did run in 2016 on getting along with Russia. So this was part of the reason for framing him for that, was it sort of fit that narrative. But also then, especially once he won the election anyway, then this became a way to cripple him. And again, the FBI themselves put it to CNN to rein him in, to prevent him from carrying out his own Russia policy, which they had all already agreed and deemed would be anti-Ukrainian and I guess therefore anti-American.
I want to wrap up soonish because I want this to be a manageable chunk of information here. But
sure.
But one other thing I want to ask, and this might seem frivolous, but Trump supporters seem to have a particularly virulent dislike of Congressman Adam Schiff. Now, why is that?
Well, he was one of the worst truthers, and he would come out and say, listen, I've seen the secret evidence. I know for a fact that it's true. He's completely compromised. He's completely owned. You just wait till the truth comes out. And he was one of the major players in stringing along the conspiracy on the Democratic side and getting people to believe in this stuff. That I know it looks kind of circumstantial now, but I've seen the real goods, and just you wait till you see them too. That kind of thing. And so he really deserves a special bit of hatred for that and resentment for that. And of course, he was rewarded. Now he's a senator. How do you like that? He's going to be sworn in as a senator in a month. And let me say real quick before we go, Tom, let me defend Carter Page and Paul Manafort. Paul Manafort is a real slick lobbyist, mostly for foreign governments, but sometimes for American politicians as well. He and Roger Stone and a couple of others had a consulting firm, and they would represent Charles Taylor and, foreign dictators around the world and whatever, all for the price. And anyway, he was absolutely falsely accused of being Vladimir Putin's handler of Trump. But the thing is about it, I'll ask your audience, don't change the channel yet, but here in a minute, guys, go and watch Patrick Bet-David's interview with Paul Manafort. Patrick Bet-David is, of course, this entrepreneur and interview host guy. And he had this really in-depth interview with Manafort, where Manafort explains his entire role in working for Yanukovych, which is what supposedly made him a Russian puppet, because he was working for this Russian puppet president doing Russian puppet things, when in fact, his whole role in Ukraine was trying to move Ukraine west. And Yanukovych wanted to move west, and that was why Yanukovych gave him the job, was to help him move west and to help him integrate with the EU and the rest. So when you watch, and he's sincere, and I don't know, I'm not saying he's sincere about every other thing in his life or everything he ever did or said for money, but I'm telling you, in that interview with Patrick Bet-David, he is clearly sincere about how he feels about the situation in Ukraine, what he wishes happened there, what he wants to happen there. And it just I don't even remember if they talk about Russiagate in that interview. It doesn't even matter. You listen to him talk about Ukraine, you understand he might as well have been, and very well may have been, CIA. He's got the cufflinks and everything, and the hair and the attitude to be a CIA type. He clearly was not working at contrary interests to the Bush or Obama administrations when it comes to Russia and Ukraine issues. It's just the damnedest lie. It's like accusing you of being a socialist or something. It's just the stupidest thing you could say about Tom Woods. It just doesn't make any sense. This guy Manafort's entire role in Ukraine was helping break them away from Russia. But did you hear that? So the R word, that's all you need to know, is like this guy has been within arm's length of Russia before. And then they did the same thing with Carter Page. Carter Page is an American businessman, oil consultant guy who would travel to Russia. And every single time he met a businessman or government official over there of any importance whatsoever, he would then come back and debrief the CIA and tell them everything about it. And the FBI had looked into him before and had no suspicions against him whatsoever. He was a patriot. And Tom, this is the only person who was held accountable for their crime in the Russiagate hoax, was the FBI agent who deleted the CIA's information that, we know Carter Page. He works for us. He's a good guy. He's an asset and a loyal, trusted American patriot. He deleted that information out so that they could show the judge that, hey, judge, here's a bunch of reasons why we like to pretend to believe that this guy is an agent of a foreign power. And it was based on their false claims against Page and their lies by omission against Page that they were able to get the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrants that they used to then, 1 hop, 2 hop, 3 hops, and now you can surveil the entire campaign team and everybody looking for dirt. And then just to wrap up here, they kept the whole thing going until the spring of 19. For really 3 full years and 2 full years of the man's presidency. Here, kitty.
My cat is on screen. I was figuring, well, no one's probably seeing me at the moment. We probably
everybody
have you up on
this
screen. I wasn't going to say anything.
Everybody listening to this in their cars. Like, what's he talking about?
My cat walked in front of the camera just now.
But they kept this thing going. Miraculously, they kept this thing going, and they forced people to believe in this thing for years. And people should be mad. The people who didn't fall for it, that's good enough. But the people who did fall for it shouldn't. I mean, to me, it's like they try to lie you into Iraq. Like, aren't you suffering from a 3rd-degree burn? I'll never get over being so disrespected as to be told 10,000 Russiagate lies. And by the way, too, I beg you and your audience, Tom, for fun, read the John Durham report, the investigation into the origins of the Russiagate investigation. It is entertaining as hell, and it'll make you madder than you could be. And by the way, I'm kind of mad at him because I did so much great work that then when his report finally came out, it completely supplanted a bunch of the writing that I had already done. Because things that I thought I had figured out, Now, he declares with certainty. So I'm like, man, I had to delete my paragraph and replace it with a new one. But anyway, read that Durham report. It is infuriating. Just the things that the FBI pretended to not yet know so that they could keep investigating is enough to set what's left of our hair on fire here, Tom. I'll tell you.
Well, Scott, I appreciate this. I mean, I have read the Durham report, and you've got, in fact, I only have this one quotation from Durham that I jotted down, even though it's tame compared to what I could have dug up. But it does sum up a lot when he says, it is the opposite's assessment that the FBI discounted or willfully ignored material information that did not support the narrative of a collusive relationship between Trump and Russia. Well, that's an understatement. But what's satisfying about this, Scott, even though I realize it's a kind of inconvenience for you, but is that if future historians have any curiosity about finding out the truth, it's sitting there. You know, like if they ever want to know what happened, it is actually sitting there, and all they have to do is read it. But let me urge people, look, I know this is a big looking book. I mean, look how big this book is. Okay, I realize that. But it reads like a novel because you just can't believe. I mean, it reads like a novel whose characters are unbelievable. You know, in the literal sense of the word, I don't believe these characters. But they are characters. Scott didn't invent these. He's telling you the story of things these people actually did. So just the Russiagate section alone, you'll find absolutely riveting, but it's a whole story, and that you can get the gist of just in the subtitle. So the book is called Provoked, and the subtitle is How Washington Started the New Cold War with Russia and the Catastrophe in Ukraine. Go pick it up. Go, not just to support Scott. I mean, we all want to support Scott, but to support yourself and the cause of truth. Go grab a copy of Provoked. Scott, thanks so much.
Thank you, Tom.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com, and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.